Yes, to answer that question, Wilma, we will be talking a little bit about rebates as well, so tax credits and rebates. Um, all right, I think we'll get started. I think most people have had a chance to join, so we'll hop right in. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar, Home Electrification Q&A, What You Need to Know About Expiring Tax Credits and Available Rebates. My name is Carolyn Stout. I'm a home comfort advisor with Elephant Energy, and I'm going to be moderating this session tonight, or this afternoon for some of you, evening. So we know that there's a lot of confusion right now around changes to federal energy incentives, and our goal today is simple. We really just want to bring clarity. We want to cut through the noise and give you the expert information you need to make confident decisions for your home. So we're thrilled this evening to be joined by an incredible panel of experts today. We have Noah Goldman, Policy Senior Manager at Rewiring America, the nation's leading electrification nonprofit. We have Edmund Joe, a tax partner with BPM, who specializes in this field and will help us navigate the financial details. And finally, you'll hear from D.R. Richardson, co-founder of Elephant Energy, who will talk about how to put all this information into action in your home. So we're hosting this webinar because a major policy change is on the horizon. Key federal tax credits for home energy upgrades are set to expire at the end of this year, which means the next few months are critical planning window for homeowners. Our focus today will be on understanding those federal tax credits. We'll also touch on the local incentives. Wilma, you asked about that. So the local incentives that will continue to be available in our core markets, California, Colorado, and Massachusetts. Just a few quick notes before we begin. This is being recorded, so don't worry about catching every detail, taking notes. We are going to follow up with an email, sending the full recording and also links to all of the resources that we discuss. Please use the Q&A box instead of the chat at the bottom of your screen to submit questions to the panelists, or you can vote for questions that you'd like to see answered. This helps us keep track of everything, and we'll make sure that we dedicate about 15 minutes at the end to answering questions live after the panelists have spoken. So with that, let's jump in. To get us started on what's changing with federal policy, I'd like to hand it over to Noah Goldman from Rewiring America. Noah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. And thank you everyone for being here. Thanks to our close partners at Elephant Energy for inviting us to join this event. It's great to be here. My name is Noah Goldman. I'm a senior manager of federal policy at Rewiring America, which is a nonprofit working to make clean, efficient home upgrades as affordable and accessible as possible for American households. In the next few minutes, I'll try to cover three things. First, the federal tax credits that are going away at the end of 2025. Second, the state and local incentives that will continue beyond 2025. And third, where you can go for reliable, up-to-date information on all of these programs. And hopefully, I'll leave you with a clearer picture about the opportunity and urgency of this moment. So when the Inflation Reduction Act was passed 3 years ago, it was the single biggest investment in clean energy in US history. For homeowners, it was a game changer. It included credits for heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, solar, insulation, EVs, everything designed to cut bills and reduce air pollution. But as many of you know, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill rolled back parts of the IRA this summer. For households, that means many of these credits will sunset at the end of the year instead of continuing through the decade. The good news, though, is that homeowners still have time to use these credits before they disappear, and there are state and local incentives that will last beyond 2025. The next slide, we can get into some deadlines and timing. So there are three big deadlines to keep in mind. First, September 30th, the end of this month. That's when the federal credit for new and used EVs goes away, as well as the manufacturer credit for EV leases. The IRS did recently clarify that all you need to do is sign a contract and make a down payment by the 30th. You don't actually need to have your new car keys in hand. But then December 31st of this year is the biggest deadline for most of the home upgrades that we'll talk about today. That's the expiration date for everything from heat pumps and insulation to solar and battery storage. We'll talk more about those credits in the next two slides. And then the last deadline is June 30th. That's for the EV chargers. Lasts a little longer, but again, the clock is ticking. So on the next slide, we'll get to the 25C tax credit, which is the workhorse credit for home efficiency upgrades. It covers 30% of the cost of qualifying upgrades up to $3,200 per year. That includes a $2,000 cap for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, plus up to $1,200 for things like insulation, doors and windows, electrical panel upgrades, and even home energy audits. A few things to note about the 25C tax credit. This credit, as well as the 25D credit we'll cover on the next slide, they are both non-refundable, meaning that they can zero out your federal income tax, but not give you money beyond that. 25C also resets every year. So if you used this credit last year or the year before for a heat pump water heater, you can use it again for a heat pump. There is no lifetime cap. There are, though, pretty strict efficiency standards for most eligible equipment, including heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. Contractors like the folks at Elephant Energy will know what equipment qualifies, but you can also double check using the DOE lookup tool that I linked here, or by checking most manufacturer websites. And again, this credit expires on December 31st, so if you're planning a project, you should not wait to start getting bids. The next tax credit, 25D, is an even bigger incentive for solar battery storage, geothermal installations. It's a flat 30% tax credit with no cap. So if you're paying $20,000 for a rooftop solar project, that's $6,000 back, assuming that you have enough federal income tax to offset. I'll note that these projects tend to take longer than the home efficiency upgrades referenced on the previous slide. So if you're even considering a project like rooftop solar, which I know many of you are based on that survey at the top of the call, I'd encourage you to start moving on that project really as soon as possible. On the next slide, we'll see that as I said, it's not all bad news. The federal credits may be ending, but many state and utility programs will be here beyond 2025. Rewiring America built a savings calculator for the sole purpose of helping you find those programs where you live. It covers most of the country, including Colorado and Massachusetts, but California is covered by the Switches On's incentive finder, which I also linked on this slide. These state and local programs can be very generous, often representing thousands of dollars back, sometimes covering the majority of costs for low-income households. And the best part is that they usually stack with federal credits. So if you can act before the end of the year, the overlapping incentives can drive costs way down. And if you can't act before the end of the year, these local incentives will still be here to offset the cost or offset the loss of the expiring federal tax credits. On the next slide, you'll see that I went ahead and filled in some information for a hypothetical family in Massachusetts, and you'll see that there are huge incentives from Mass Save, up to $10,000 for heat pumps, $750 for heat pump water heaters. These incentives may change in 2026 and beyond, but they'll probably still lead the nation and represent significant cost savings. There are smaller but also significant rebates in California and Colorado, as well as other types of incentives like subsidized financing. And I know that many of you are also probably wondering about the home energy rebate programs, which were also created in the Inflation Reduction Act. Unlike the tax credits, they were not cut by the One Big Beautiful Bill, but their rollout has been extremely slow. Here we are 3 years later, and only a dozen states have launched programs. That said, once the rebate programs are fully in place, they will make existing state and local and utility programs even stronger, especially for low and moderate income households. If you do want to learn more about these local incentives, the safest answer is always to go to the official source. So you can find that source by clicking through on our savings calculator. In this case, clicking through to the Mass Save website, but you can check your state energy office's website, or go check your local government, program administrator, or utility. And last but not least, on the next slide, Rewiring America has pulled all of this information together in one place at rewiringamerica.org/save. Thank you, Teresita, for dropping that in the chat. And that's where you'll find our resource hub, tools like the savings calculator I mentioned, and even weekly drop-in sessions where you can ask questions directly to experts. We're actually having a California-specific drop-in session this Thursday with Elephant Energy. A Massachusetts drop-in session is likely going to happen on September 25th, and probably a Colorado session somewhere in between. So if you leave this call and you have more questions that you want answered, feel free to join us then. And the last slide just has a QR code back to rewiringamerica.org/save. So feel free to share that with friends and neighbors. And with that, I will hand it back over. Thank you.
No, thank you so much for that excellent overview. That was fantastic. So now we have a little more of an understanding of the policy landscape. And so let's get into the meat of the financial details. I'm pleased to introduce Edmund Joe from BPM, who will walk us through the tax eligibility and answer some of the most common questions that homeowners have. Thank you so much, Edmund.
Thank you for the introduction, Kellen, and nice meeting everybody. Good evening. Like Noah said, there are a lot of changes happening right now because of the one big beautiful tax bill that just passed. And I just want to go through some of the history of the bill and what changed, and also go into the breadth of some of the common asked questions, like what kind of document you need, how to file the tax return, and how the credit works. So next slide, please. So in today's agenda is really try to identify, what happened with the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act. As like Noah said, probably one of the single biggest, tax incentive for energy efficiency in the history, and how the most recent one big beautiful bill rolled up all the sort of the act and what it's entitled to. And the next is really understand how each of the energy tax credit works. Go around the idea of eligibility and qualification and how you can claim the credit and what documentation you need in the case of an IRS audit. And then a lot of you probably asking, hey, can I combine an incentive and, with my tax credit, whether there's any state and local incentive and tax credits as well, in addition to the federal credit. So we're going to go through all that in the next 10 minutes or so. Next slide, please. So some of the most common question we got is really, hey, for eligibility and qualification, are there labor installation costs included in the credit calculation? So we're going to go through and answer that. Or can I get a credit for heat pump installed on a rental property? So a lot of people are not just asking as a homeowner, but also, as a landlord as well. And then really claiming the credit and documentation. Now I had my, system installed. How am I going to go around to get the credit that you said tax credit? So of course that involves filing tax returns. And then in case of the IRS audit, the IRS will always recommend you keep a set of documentation to support the cost that you put in, the system you put in. So we're going to go through all that. And last but not least, kind of combining the incentive with the tax credit and what's the difference between the two. So incentive is different than tax credit, and how is that different from your utility company, and also from your local government, and from your state, and ultimately from the federal level. So we're going to go through all that. Next slide, please. So the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022, again, kind of reinstated tax credit up to 30% of qualified expenditure. So that was being renewed in 2022, and then it's supposed to be last until December 31st, 2032. So like Noah mentioned earlier, you still have more time to do all this upgrade to your home and, take advantage of the tax credit. But, this summer, the one big beautiful bill passed and kind of put an immediate stop in that front. So Section 25D, which cover, residential clean energy credit, that will be, terminate right on December 31st, 2025. So once after that day pass, any upgrade you do to your home won't get a tax credit for. Same thing for what we call Section 25C, the energy efficient home improvement credit. Same thing, it will terminate right after December 31st, 2025. And the next few slides will go through what each of those, different credit covered by each different section. So next slide, please. So the energy efficient home improvement, or what I mentioned, Section 25C, again, you get up to 30% of qualified expenditure. There is an annual cap to it, the 2,000. But under this category, the item you're looking at is like heat pump, right? Heat pump, water heater. So those are the things that sort of cap at 2,000. But again, you get 30% of overall cost. Let's say you what do I mean by 30%? Let's say you put a $10,000 upgrade to heat pump, right? 30%, which means you're able to take a credit of $3,000. But because there's an annual cap of 2,000, so ultimately your tax credit is 2,000. So similar method apply to other items such as windows, doors, and then even energy audit. Of course, there's different price tag for each, and there's a different cap as well. So the annual cap for anything you have to upgrade with windows and doors and energy audit is $1,200, specifically $600 for windows, $500 for doors, and $150 for energy audit. Next slide, please. So the next one is probably one of the biggest tax credit out of all the improvement you can do to your home to make your energy efficient. This is Section 25D. Again, same cap, 30% qualified expenditure. The biggest part is that there's no annual cap. So if you put 100 grand upgrade in your house, 30% of that, you can get a tax credit up to $30,000. Unlike the previous section that, you get an annual cap. So again, these tend to be larger energy systems such as solar panel, solar water heaters, geothermal, battery storage. With a battery, you got to have a 3 kilowatt hour plus battery, and then the wind property. So here are the two distinctions between Section 25C and 25D. Again, 25D is more like, aiming at a bigger system that get you a bigger, larger tax credit with no annual cap. Next slide, please. So that really back to the next question is, well, how get the eligibility and qualification? So first of all, it really applies to existing homes. So your primary or vacation home counts for federal, sometimes a little different for state level. Some states only cover the primary home, just like Massachusetts. For the rental, unfortunately, because the landlord doesn't live in the property, treating that as a primary or vacation home, so such credit is not available for the landlord. However, the renter that's living in the property, they can pay for the upgrade themselves to the property, and then they can claim the tax credit as a renter of the property because they are living there and utilizing it as a primary residence. And of course, the qualification of cost, this includes the purchase price, the labor, and the installation cost. The little tricky part about the labor cost is if you're installing heat pumps, solar, like system setup, so those are labor costs are included. But when you're installing a window, the installation, unfortunately, for labor cost section is being excluded. However, the purchase price of the windows and installation material, those are being covered as part of the expenditure into your tax credit calculation. So there are some of the distinction between the two. Next slide, please. So now I've completed my work, and I'm ready to go, how I'm going to claim the credit and what documentation do I need. So first of all, you have to file your annual federal tax return to claim the credit. If you've done all the work and you don't file the tax return, you can't claim it. So within the tax return, there's a form called 5695, the residential energy credit form. That form will include either the windows, either the solar panel, the heat pump, everything. Any of the home efficient upgrade you've done at home will all fall into this one form. And again, you're gonna list out all the costs you have, and then all do a calculation based on 30%. And then it further cut down to, is this item an annual cap or without annual cap? So all the calculation will be done in that form. Just work with your CPA to go through that form and what you need. So the first thing is really, okay, what do I need to gather, right, to file my tax return? So keep a copy of the contract, all the receipts, and all the payment confirmation that you pay a service provider. So those will sort of, substantiate the cost you put in. And also keep the manufacturer certification too, because a lot of times the IRS is going to come back and say, hey, does this system qualify, right? This is an energy efficient system. So you got to keep those as well. And of course, last but not least, you have to have a system that's been completed and ready to operate by December 31st, 2025. You cannot say, okay, I'm just going to buy all the, the material I'm going to install next year. No, that doesn't count. You got to have the completion of the installation, on the switcher button is ready to go, it's going to generate electricity. What happens sometimes is, hey, I'm waiting for my utility company to connect or approve the source system to connect to the system. That is fine. That's still considered as ready to go as long as you can turn on a button and it's working at any second or any minute of acknowledgement. So again, like Noah mentioned earlier, the credit is non-refundable. What does that mean? Non-refundable means you cannot use the credit to reduce your tax below zero, right? So let's say you have a $50 tax liability and your energy credit is $100, right? So first, they'll take the tax liability reduced by any credit you have first. So you have a $50 liability, you have a $100 credit. So 50 minus 100, now you have a $50 excessive credit. You're not going to lose it. That $50 tax credit is going to carry over to next year to offset the next year tax liability. So you're not going to lose the excessive of credit. It's only going to carry forward, but you're not going to also get a refund based on the tax credit alone. But let's say you also have $10 of tax withholding or estimated tax that you made. In my example, when the tax credit really reduced the tax liability to zero, the $10 withholding or tax estimated tax that you made, that $10 is going to get refunded to you. So, but you're not going to get the excessive tax credit as a refundable, but it will carry forward. And again, for certain states, there's a state level credit as well, since a lot of participants come from Colorado and some in Massachusetts. So those states either offer a tax credit or state level incentive as well. Apology to all my Californian out there. Unfortunately, California does not have a state level tax credit. But again, they still have local utility companies that offer incentives and rebates. So next slide, please. So what's the possibility of combining the two? Like I said, it is possible to combine. You can take the federal tax credit, the federal tax return, and then you can take a credit on your state tax return. And then any incentive you get from your local utility company, your county utility company or your local property incentive, anything like that, you can utilize all at the same time. But one tricky part is rebate is if you're claiming a federal tax credit, you have to reduce the cost by the rebate you get. So remember I said you got to add up all your costs at the beginning, and then you take a 30% of the expenditure to equal to the tax credit. If you get an incentive or rebate, you have to reduce that total cost by the same amount. So which means your federal credit will be a bit lower because of the rebate and incentive from your company or who you use. So the state credit for Colorado, that can be only claimed by the contractor, not as your individual household. So a lot of time what they can do is offer a discount upfront, just depends how you work it out with them. For the state like Massachusetts, you get 15% of the cost, and there's an annual cap of $1,000, but it's only applied to principal residents. So not your vacation home, not your secondary home. So for California, unfortunately, there's no state level, but continue looking into your local utility company, see if there's any incentive there as well. So that's pretty much cover up what on the tax front and how financially all this worked out. So thank you for your time.
Edmund, thank you so much. That was incredibly helpful. All right, so we've thrown a lot of information at you. We know what's changing on the policy level. We now know how the tax credit works, but how do you actually put this all into practice? So to cover that, I'll turn it over to DR Richardson, co-founder of Elephant Energy.
Thanks, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you, or nice to speak with you all today. Elephant Energy, if you don't know us, we're on a mission to make electrification super simple, super easy. We're here to accelerate the electrification movement. Can you go to the next slide, please? Why electrification? I think a lot of you probably know this already, but it's a massive source of carbon emissions. And as a homeowner, it's one of the few things that you can do that actually meaningfully make an impact on carbon emissions. So it's super, super important to do it, yet it's really, really hard to do it. Next slide. why, beyond just the green parts of it, it's way more comfortable for your home. So if anyone's ever been in a home that has mini splits or a ducted heat pump, it's way more comfortable than an air conditioner, a window AC unit, a typical gas furnace. They just create much more even heating and cooling. In many places across the country, you can save a lot of money on utility bills. Depends on what you were coming from before. If you were coming from electric resistance, if you're coming from propane, certain parts of the country, again, if you're coming with from natural gas, or if you're pairing it with solar, there's a lot of money to be saved on your utility bills. And then, what we've started to realize is that actually burning things in homes isn't always great from an air quality perspective. So we're starting to learn about the detrimental impacts that burning stuff indoors has on things like childhood asthma. And then lastly, but not least, studies are starting to show more and more that electrified homes can actually command a higher premium on the market when you go to sell your home. What does it mean when we talk about electrification? We're really talking about four main things, although you can do a number of other smaller things. The biggest is the furnace, so replacing a gas-powered furnace or boiler with a heat pump, whether it's ducted or a mini split heat pump. Water heaters, swapping gas or electric water heaters to the much more efficient, lower operating cost heat pump water heater, swapping out gas ranges for induction ranges, and then swapping gas vehicles with electric vehicles. Heat pumps, as I started to talk about a little bit before, they're a pretty amazing technology. The simplest way to understand it is that an air conditioner. It's the exact same technology as an air conditioner, exact same technology as a fridge. What's cool is now heat pumps can actually work in the winter. They couldn't work in the winter before, but even in the winter and the coldest days, and we know because we've done thousands of homes in places as cold as Colorado, there's enough heat in those cold winter days, evenings, mornings, to where you can still compress it and bring that heat indoors to where it's not creating heat, it's just moving heat around, and that makes it super, super efficient. Same principle works in summer, just works in reverse, where it's able to take that heat, send it outside, make homes much more comfortable. Again, sort of the same technology as an air conditioner. Electrification, again, can be tricky depending on where you are. There's a lot of things that have to go right for a great electrification project. And so our suggestion is always that homeowners are looking for a good partner to act as a guide and be along with you for every step of that process. It starts with designing the right system, making sure costs, rebates, incentives are all broken down transparently, making sure that the contractor coordination is all smooth and easy for you, right? With an electrification project, you're often coordinating multiple contractors, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, drywall. Having somebody do that work creates a lot of value. Making sure that you're optimizing and maximizing every incentive and rebate that's available. Doing that, and if your contractor partner will actually finance that work for you, so reducing that upfront cost for you can be incredibly beneficial. And then oftentimes, especially with rebates and incentives and warranty, there's a lot of paperwork, and making sure that your contractor has a process to take care of that on your behalf. Just a note, others have mentioned it, but because of the impacts of OBBBA, installer capacity is filling up really quickly. So we at Elephant are doing everything we can to open up additional availability, but that's definitely shrinking. You're seeing that in solar, you're seeing that in the heat pump space, but people are interested in taking advantage of this tax credit before it expires. And if you're interested in moving, we're trying to advise people to just move faster rather than wait. So just a super quick recap on federal incentives, right? Up to $2,000 for heat pumps or heat pump water heaters, up to $1,200 for weatherization insulation, $600 for electric panel upgrades, up to 30% of the cost for solar and battery storage, and then an EV charger credit of up to $1,000 that expires next year. So far, guidance from Treasury has been very firm. The project must be installed and fully running by December 31st, 2025. So this year, we're staying on the lookout and working with our friends at Rewiring America to see if there's any daylight to where, maybe you could purchase equipment or anything, but so far the guidance has been very clear. Projects must actually be installed and operational to claim the tax credit this year, unlike solar and storage, which has a little bit more wiggle room. So the next couple slides, we'll just run through a few examples of how you can stack up rebates and incentives in various geographies to really reduce that upfront price and make sure that overall price is really affordable. So an average heat pump project, a ducted system in Colorado might cost about $20,000 upfront. There's an Excel, if you're in the right territory, there's an Excel heat pump rebate that can be taken off point of sale, so the contractor can take that. There's Energy Smart rebates in Boulder County as an example. You can take those up front. There's a state tax credit that was mentioned earlier. You can take that off up front. The only one that can't be taken off up front is the federal income tax credit that flows directly to the homeowner. But all the others can come off the top to just make that project much lower cost upfront for you. So that total cost after incentives might be significantly south of $10,000, making this substantially lower cost than a new gas furnace and air conditioner, as an example. Next slide, in Massachusetts, the Mass Save program is prevalent for about 85% of the state, and a lot of the other municipal utilities are replicating that for the IOUs. So if you're in a Mass Save territory, what that typically looks like for one of our customers is a heat pump, a ducted heat pump, maybe a $21,000 upfront install price, $10,000 point of sale rebate from the Mass Save program, this $2,000 federal income tax credit, and then I see we don't have listed the Massachusetts state tax credit, but that can apply as well. So can really bring that cost again in Massachusetts down below $10,000. In Massachusetts, there's also this really attractive 0% heat loan financing that makes things really affordable. That's free money for homeowners who can qualify for it. And then in California, it's a similarly complicated story, similar to Colorado. I wish more folks would get on the Massachusetts bandwagon, where it's just one simple, straightforward rebate. But in California, depending on where you are, there's a bunch of different rebates and incentives that you might be able to qualify for. It's pretty fragmented, so working with a local contractor who really knows your specific geography and what incentives you might be able to apply for is super important in California. But again, you can stack everything up and bring that total cost down below $10,000, which again makes these heat pump systems substantially lower cost than gas and gas furnaces and air conditioners. Lastly, we know this is complicated, so we created a simple guide for you. We'll provide plenty of links to that. You can scan the QR code, but hopefully this helps you take action if that's on your plan for 2025. Some more information from us, and now back to Carolyn.
DR, thank you so much. And thank you again, Noah and Edmund. We have about 15-ish minutes left. So we've gotten some questions from you in the Q&A. We also, a few of you submitted some pre-registration questions, so we really appreciate that. We'll make sure we get to all of those. And please, as we're going through these and as the panelists are answering questions, feel free to keep adding questions to the Q&A and we will get to as many as we can. DR or Noah, I'm going to throw this first one. This might be more for Noah, but I'll see who wants to answer it. So Leslie had asked, and DR, you answered this already in the Q&A, so if anyone wants to look at it, about Massachusetts incentives for upgrading electrical panels. So yeah, there is a, DR answers there's a $600 federal tax credit for electrical service upgrades, and $5,000 of that can be added to the heat loan if you're doing that in connection with a heat pump. But then there was a follow-up on this about, I think the question is whether the federal loans that solar companies are pushing, if those are going away, and then also a second question that Edmund, I think, is going to be for you, if the tax credits are still rolling over even once they end. So let's take the first one. I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, Leslie, and please type in if I'm not, just whether there's any change to the solar financing that's out there right now. I don't know if Noah, you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And Leslie, I'd love to know more about exactly what you're referring to. Because as far as I'm aware, there is no sort of federal financing program for solar installations. There are definitely state financing, state subsidized financing programs, and private financing programs. But I'm not aware of a federal solar loan that may or may not be expiring. But let me poke around and see what I can come up with.
Thanks, Noah. And then I think, Edmund, I'm going to give you the second half of this. And this question actually came in a few times from registrants as well as they were signing up, but just confirming whether this tax credit can still be carried forward to future years if you don't use it all, even though it's ending.
Yeah, so the credit again cannot be, refundable, meaning anything you reduce the tax liability to zero, whatever excess gonna get carried forward to, future year, you're not gonna lose it. The credit gonna stick with your tax return, roll over every year, the number gonna flow back in every year. Try to reduce your tax liability before considering your tax withholding and estimated tax payment. So some of them you might concern, hey, if this goes away in a future year, how's the tax form going to keep track of that? So again, even though the credit officially ended, but the form that carrying the credit should be still in there. So again, a lot of time IRS do things before they can finalize how practically gonna work. So I'm not gonna worry that you're gonna lose the credit, but somehow it's gonna come back in a way to carry over on your tax return next year. So
Great, Edmund, thank you. Noah, this one might be for you as well. Or maybe Edmund, are there any credits available for induction stoves? And let's take this, I guess, as a tax credit question first, if there are any tax credits, but if there are local rebates and incentives as well. You can address that.
Yes. This is an easy answer, which is that there are not federal tax credits for induction or electric stoves, but there are lots of state and local incentives depending on where you are, that could apply to induction stoves, and the federal home energy rebate programs that I mentioned. They do have a line item up to $840 in an upfront discount for induction stoves. But it's up to your state to decide whether they're going to offer that discount.
And one question or one thing that I'd add in there, Noah, is there is an induction range that's on the market, and there might be a couple of them. Copper is one company that has an induction range with a battery built into it. Because it has the battery, it qualifies for the solar and storage tax credit. So there are some induction ranges, but it's not because it's induction, it's because it has a small battery in it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, Copper, Impulse, two companies that make those
Impulse,
battery integrated stoves. So check those out for sure.
Awesome,
Carolyn, there's a
thank
question
you.
about what a mini split is. Do you mind flipping
Yes.
back to that?
Yeah, I was gonna
the
lob that
family.
one to you. I think this is just a quick, I think this is something that got mentioned a few times, and just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, DR, can you just address what is a mini split when we're saying that?
Yeah, and Teresita, do you mind going back to the slide that had the picture of the mini split in it? But basically, there's sort of two main technologies that heat pumps come in. One is a ducted system. So if your home has ductwork, then most often the simplest, lowest cost thing to do is going to be to replace whatever is heating and cooling in that ductwork, typically a furnace and an air conditioner. You can just swap that for a heat pump, and that will use your existing ducts. There's also a ductless solution called mini splits. That's that thing you see in the top right. It's like a giant bread box sort of above the family. That gives you room by room zonal control, which is awesome. It does not use ductwork. It just connects directly to the exterior condensers.
Awesome. Thanks, DR. Hopefully that clarifies it. And this is an interesting one. DR, I'm going to give this one to you as well, but Noah, if you want to jump in. So given recent funding cuts for state level programs in Mass and a crunch to install systems before the federal credit expires, what are the risks of the state programs running out of funding? And it seems like this is specifically a Mass question, but could be worth addressing. Are we concerned about state level programs running out of funding?
No, I'd love to hear your take, and then I'm happy to chime in.
Yeah, so we do, so unlike the tax credits, which have basically, for all intents and purposes, unlimited funding. There's no cap on how many people can use the tax credits. State level programs do have a budgetary cap, so we do see funding run out in states where uptake is high, like California and New York and Massachusetts. That said, I think Massachusetts in particular has a very strong energy efficiency program funded by their utilities, and I believe that Mass Save has, which is the utility funded program. I believe that they've already announced their 2026 incentive levels, which makes me think that they're confident in the funding that they have for the coming year. But I do think we'll see a reshuffling as the federal incentives expire and as states adjust to budget shortfalls. I think you can expect to see some adjustments in funding levels, which is probably another reason to go out and do these projects on the sooner side.
I think that's a great answer, Noah. The only thing I'd chime in with, especially in Massachusetts, is they're one of the more thoughtful states about creating continuity from one year to the next around rebates and really educating people and providing a lot of transparency on those rebates and how they're going to change year over year. So Massachusetts' most recent energy efficiency plan was like a 3-year, $5 billion plan. So they have plenty of money to fund these programs. They're not in danger of running out. Can't say the exact same for other programs. We've seen in Colorado how funding can be pulled pretty quickly from states or utilities as they run out. So that's one of the things that we do at Elephant is just try to pay a really close attention to how much funding is available, have relationships with the key stakeholders there, and make sure that we're working closely with our customers to ensure that if we've promised them a rebate, that they're going to access that rebate, and that we're going to eat the difference if that rebate goes away for some reason.
Awesome, thank you. This is another question that I think is a quick answer from, I think Noah just answered it. I was just going to ask if, look at this question, that if you had a system installed in 2024, will you be able to claim it on the 2025 taxes? So just to clarify this one, it does have to be claimed on the year in which it was installed.
Yeah, I might take that one. So in order to reclaim it, you got to file an amended 2024 return to claim the credit on the 2024 return. So you have to go back and amend your return.
Great, thank you. So that's good to know that's still feasible for people.
Mm-hmm.
DR, I think this is a good one for you. Do you, and maybe not specific, do you recommend electricians or companies who will actually do the paperwork for you?
Yes, we do that because we found, I mean, look, the whole reason Elephant Energy exists is because we found the existing service industry generally, they're good at installing. They're not good at the paperwork. They're not good at tracking all the rebates and incentives. So we try to do a lot of that work. We do a lot of that work and we try to help others do it. But finding a contractor and making sure that they're going to do that paperwork is a key part of that vetting process ahead of time to find a partner for you in your home.
Great, thanks. And we did get a lot of really great questions in advance as well. So I'm going to address some of those that people submitted. I think this one did get addressed in the talks, but I think it's worth reiterating. So Edmund, I'm going to give this one to you. Someone's starting a renovation now, but might not be ready to install the heat pump before the December 31st. can they purchase the equipment now and install later? So I know this was addressed, but just want to kind of hear it again. I think it's worth reiterating.
Yeah, so for a case like that, the R is very strict on that. The system has to be ready to run and place in service by December 31st, 2025. So you're in the middle of renovation, you want to buy all the material and it's going to install next year when the time's better. But that instant, you actually don't qualify for the tax credit. The system has to be installed and ready to flip on a button. It will work right in that instant. That's what considers ready to place in service. So that has to be ready by December 31st, 2025 to get that credit.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful clarification on that. This one is about the Excel heat pump rebate program. So Dior, I think I'll give this to you. Does the Excel heat pump rebate program have an annual amount of money available for rebates? And once that amount is gone for the year, would a person have to wait till the next year for funds to be available again? Related to what you
Whoever
were
asked that
asking
question.
before.
Sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
I was just saying slightly related to the, the topic
Yeah.
we were talking about before.
Yeah, whoever asked that question, if you know how to find out the answer, please let me know. Figuring out utility budgets when they are a little bit more opaque than Massachusetts has been is one of the hardest things that we've had to do. So Excel is just starting to be a little bit more transparent with their budgets. They're trying to give people a little bit more transparency into how rebate amounts are going to change, what the annual planning cycle is. The good news with Excel specifically is late last year, they passed the Clean Heat Plan. It's a $440 million plan that's providing bonus incentives for rebates right now in Colorado. That money is nowhere near close to being fully allocated or close to it. So we're tracking it. They tend to be budget driven versus calendar year driven. Sometimes that overlaps the calendar year driven and sometimes it doesn't. So I don't have a more specific answer other than to try to work closely with a contractor who's figuring out and staying on top of this and is going to own the risk of making sure that they get it right with you.
Great, thank you. No, I have another one for you. Switching gears a little bit. We've had a couple of questions on residential wind installs, and I know you answered the first one of those that came in. The residential wind projects would also be eligible for the 30% credit, tax credit expiring at the end of this year as well. And there was a follow-up on that on whether you or Rewiring America has any resources to explore this as a residential project.
Rewiring does not have a lot of resources on residential wind because it is, a relatively uncommon upgrade. But let me poke around and see if I can find any good resources to direct you to.
Awesome.
And maybe this is the motivation we can take to add some resources there as well.
Awesome, thank you. And Edmund, a follow-up for you on if somebody did not follow either in 2024, did not file in 2024, sorry, needs to do an amended, or if somehow they miss it in 2025, is there a deadline for filing those amended returns?
Yes, so the statute limitation is 3 years from the filing due line. So let's say your 2024 return was supposed to be due by April 2025. So you have 3 years from that date or whenever your returns actually file. So if you never file, those statute limitations don't apply. So you can go back and file them. But if you already filed, then it's 3 years from the day of filing.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
This one in the chat, probably Noah for you. Whether the one big not so beautiful bill differentiates between the treatment of air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps.
Yes, well, the Inflation Reduction Act differentiated between air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps because air source heat pumps got looped in with the 25C tax credit. So that's the 30% tax credit capped at $2,000 per year. Ground source heat pumps, on the other hand, got grouped in with the 25D tax credit. So that's uncapped. So you can claim the 25D credit for 30% off the entire cost of a ground source heat pump installation.
Awesome, thank you. DR, we have a question for you. This was from someone who submitted this before registering, but are there any common installation issues that can disqualify a system from federal or state credits or incentives?
So keep me honest, but I think that only thing that really could disqualify somebody from a federal tax credit, I guess, do the two things. One is, was it actually installed? So yes, it has to be installed, and it's operational. The second thing is making sure that the equipment is on the qualified product list, that it meets certain Energy Star efficiency requirements. I think those are the only two things for federal tax credits. Rebates locally are a whole different can of worms. That's going to depend on the rebate program that you're working with specifically.
Great, thank you. And I think we have time for a couple more questions. Oh, so someone's clarifying here on the federal tax credit. And I think, Edmund, I don't know if it's worth going back to the one slide that you had, but we have questions about, what exactly people need to present. I think you had a slide that covered that.
Yes, so
Just exactly what documentation somebody needs to have.
So, because IRS will audit these here and there. So in the case of an audit, you got to prove to them, hey, you have a contract in place. So a lot of times people keep a copy of the contract. Like what work's going to be done, what equipment is going to be installed. Like DR said, has a certain level of qualification, energy, qualification. And on top of that, all the costs, all the invoices, all the clear check, all the payment confirmation, and then ultimately officially, okay, the system is completed, it's ready to turn on and ready to use anytime you want, right before December 31st, 2025. So a lot of documentation is really around receipts, payment confirmation, and then the certification of the system that you install, and a completion certificate that said as of December 31st, 2025, the system's ready to go and operational.
Great. And I think we have time for one more. And Edmund, I'm going to give you this one. Should be a fairly straightforward one, but I think it's an important one that we address. Are there limits on income or filing status to claim these credits?
No, there's no income limit. So yeah, the only limit is really the annual cap based on the type of system, and then the 30% cap on the overall expenditure. So those are the only thing that you need to watch out for when talking about the credit.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you everyone. Thank you everyone who submitted questions and joined us. And a massive thank you to our panel of experts, Noah Goldman from Rewiring America, Edmund Joe from BPM, and DR Richardson from Elephant Energy. So your insights have been invaluable tonight. We really appreciate it. And thank you again to everyone, all your questions. And as a reminder, be on the lookout for a follow-up email with the webinar recording and also a link to all of the resources that were mentioned, including the downloadable checklist that we had there. So your next step is to find out exactly what these savings mean for you. So you can scan the QR code on the screen, any of the QR codes on the screen. So Rewiring America and Elephant Energy, we have some cost calculators. There's QR code to BPM's website as well. And you can also, if you scan the Elephant Energy QR code, you can book a consultation directly with one of our advisors if you have any follow-up questions that were not answered tonight. So thank you again for joining the herd and have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.